boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Set to go down on the undercard of Baumgartner versus Bomi in New York. Amateur standout and unbeaten fighter Raquel Miller will return to action after what was a 3-year hiatus opposite the ring Brazilian amateur standout Adriana dos Santos Araujo in a contest scheduled for 6 rounds in the women's super middleweight division. In previous years, Raquel has campaigned as low as 154. Now she's campaigning as high as 168. At 168, Jarrell Green holds a title. Franchon Cruz has the rest. So those would theoretically be the fights to make for Raquel, provided she wins in New York, sporting an unblemished record, 13 wins with no losses and no draws, 6 knockouts. 41 years old, having not seen action since March of 2023, roughly 3 years ago. 3 years later, MVP signed her late last year, and this will be her first fight under the promotional banner, Adriana dos Santos Araujo. Bronze medalist at the 2012 London Olympic Games, sports a professional record of 6 wins with 3 losses and no draws, only 1 recorded knockout, having never been knocked out in 9 professional bouts. She is not having the success as a professional boxer that she had as an amateur, which is often the case. I say it all the time. Not every great amateur makes a great professional. Currently coming off of 3 consecutive losses. The loss to Chantel Cameron over 5 years ago, the more recent loss to Melinda Watpool, and the even more recent loss to Mary Casamassa Asa in November of 2024. Adriana Araujo has also been inactive in the last year and change. So the night of, both fighters will be shaking off considerable ring rust when the opening bell sounds. Raquel more than Adriana, but I would argue that Raquel is the more talented fighter, which is funny because she didn't do as well in the amateurs as Adriana did. But I've seen them both, and I think that Raquel is the craftier boxer. The biggest issue with Raquel is both her age and her sparse schedule of activity. She didn't box at all the year of the pandemic in 2020, only once in 2021, only once in 2022, only once the following year. Then from 2024 till now, she saw no action. In truth, I'm surprised that she's still boxing. I had thought she hung the gloves up, making this a curious signing for MVP. As good as she is, why would they decide to sign a 41-year-old fighter who hasn't boxed in such a long time? What is the end game here? Well, it could be they're building her up as an opponent for Jarrell Green, their champion. Or it could be that they're keeping their options open in what fighters they're picking up, because I have it on good authority that some of these recent signings with the bigger names, the more recognizable fighters, they're having a tough time getting them to accept fights. I don't want to say any names. Some of which are asking for too much money, far in excess of what their fights are worth, on the premise of what Katie and Amanda made when they fought each other, not understanding you're not Katie and Amanda. Others who don't seem to want to take on any tough challenges, fight anybody difficult, anybody hard. There's a couple of picky eaters over there, and maybe it's for that reason MVP went on a separate signing spree, picking up fighters like Raquel Miller, who might perhaps be more negotiable, more willing to take on tough fights, the kind that can entertain a crowd on the premise that they're hungrier and more in need of opportunities than the established names, their egos. It's not a foregone conclusion that Raquel Miller wins in her MVP debut. Naomi Valle didn't, and she's a lot younger and more active than Raquel Miller. There is room in this bout for things to go sideways for what still is an unbeaten Raquel Miller, so I'm going to be paying attention to what happens in April when these two share the ring. We'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches. Men's cruiserweight news: David Benavidez remains committed to Bivol and Better B fights after the Zurdo Ramirez fight, or so he says. There would be a significant interest in matching him against unbeaten ring IBF champion Jayo Pataya if Benavidez beats Ramirez in a Prime Video pay-per-view main event at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. The WBC light heavyweight champion mentioned moving up to heavyweight in the past too, but Benavidez is determined to solidify his legacy in the light heavyweight division before seriously considering those two options. Benavidez, 29 years old, reiterated his ambitious blueprint to defeat Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev during the newest episode of Inside the Ring, which premiered Monday on DAZN. There was already things in play that I wanted to accomplish in my own career, Benavidez said, and I'm moving slow. Let me get this fight first and I hear a lot of people talking about heavyweight, but these are big guys. This is an extremely different type of power, so I'm not thinking about heavyweight anytime soon. If I think about heavyweight, maybe that's like probably 5 or 6 years from now, but what I really wanted to do is become unified champion at light heavyweight and a dominant champion there.
Then why go up to cruiserweight for a one-off? Going up to cruiser is only going to make it that much harder for you to drop back down to light heavy. It all sounds good, and that's what hooks people in about David Benavidez. He says all the right things.
I've been telling you guys I want to get Bivol and then Better Beef. Those are the 2 fights I want for myself, and I know all the world boxing wants to see. So right now, that I can make 175 comfortably, I feel like we've got to make that fight happen first. We've got this fight, we're going to get these belts first, and then we're going to go back down, then come back up, because like I said, I already had cards I wanted to play. I want to take care of this first. Russia's Bivol is expected to make a mandated defense of his IBF light heavyweight crown against German underdog Michael Eifert in his next bout, which is expected to be part of the Ring's Alexander Usyk vs. Rico Verhoeven undercard May 23rd at the Pyramids at Giza near Cairo, Egypt. Assuming he defeats Eifert, Bivol, who owns the Ring Magazine, WBA, and WBO titles as well, and Better Beef, might fight for a 3rd time, which could alter Benavidez' plan temporarily. Phoenix's Benavidez is fully focused on becoming champion in a 3rd weight class versus Ramirez. A former sparring partner, he's listed by DraftKings as a 3-1 favorite to beat. I'm coming back to light heavyweight, Benavidez said. I don't want anybody to get it wrong that I'm staying at cruiser. Obviously, if good opportunities present themselves, then we'll stay here a little bit longer. Bivol, he's gonna do a tune-up fight, and for me, instead of just waiting around and defending my title and getting a regular fight, I thought it would be a good idea to go up and challenge Zurdo for his 2 titles, one of which he may have to drop immediately after.
The brown belt.
There's 2 things in play that may keep the brown belt away from Phoenix, Arizona's David Benavidez. For starters, they're lukewarm on sanctioning the fight now that the WBC has taken it upon themselves to get involved and put some commemorative title on the line, which we talked about in my previous video. And even if they can smooth things over, say David wins, what else might cost him the brown belt is that the WBO doesn't allow their champions to hold titles in other weight classes. David still has the WBC at light heavyweight.
If he sticks to his word and drops back down to light heavyweight, it's going to cost him the brown belt. And even if he doesn't, so long as he still holds that WBC title at light heavyweight, the same thing's going to happen. The World Boxing Organization is going to make him choose.
It was recently confirmed that both Amazon Prime and DAZN will be the distributors of this pay-per-view, so you can purchase it on either platform. This might go a long way towards strengthening Golden Boy Promotions' case against Virgil Ortiz that they still have an ongoing relationship with DAZN, and this would serve as proof. DAZN is carrying this pay-per-view on the premise that Zurdo is a Golden Boy Promotions fighter. Golden Boy that they're still working with. So the odds makers have David Benavidez, who's debuting at what is his 3rd weight all the way up there at cruiser, as a 3-1 favorite to beat Zurdo Ramirez.
Because he is perceived as being better than Zurdo Ramirez without having actually proven it. He is the more popular fighter of the 2.
And sometimes popularity alone is what sways people's opinions. What's the case for Zurdo to win? Because I don't see that many people making it. If there was one, it would have to be that Zurdo Ramirez has more fights, more rounds in the bank. He is more experienced, at least at this weight, than David Benavidez is, having been in there with not 1 but 2 separate cruiserweight champions and having dominated them both.
There's that. There is that he's a little bit bigger to the eye. He's a little taller, little heavier than David Benavidez. There's also that
very rare occasion that David Benavidez isn't the bigger man in the room. And there is also the stylistic matchup that Zurdo has shown more ways of fighting a fight than David Benavidez. David is a pressure guy through and through. That's what he does, and that's what he's good at. And for a long time, Zurdo was that kind of guy too, up until he moved up to cruiser and did a full 180. He's more of a boxer now, more of a mover.
At 168 and 175, he was more of a pressure guy, just like David. But upon moving up to cruiser and facing bigger guys, he switched his style up, decided to get on his toes more, move more, box more, and he can use that in a David Benavidez fight because you know what David's coming to do. He wants to mow you down.
Should David crash the pocket and get in close on Zurdo, Zurdo's proven many times he can handle himself within close quarters. That used to be a sweet spot. Now, he's got more bells and whistles, more ways of fighting a fight. So if there is an argument for Zurdo to upset the apple cart for the betting favorite, it would be that, and that he hasn't been down as many times as David.
Rather inconvenient little statistic that doesn't often get mentioned. David Benavidez has been down more times than Zurdo, knocked down years ago by Ronald Gavril, knocked down years later by David Morrell, but he's supposed to be the monster.
Thus, people always fail to mention that. Is Zurdo Ramirez more durable than David Benavidez? It's a legitimate question. If nothing else, he is more experienced at this weight than David, against naturally bigger men than David. So that more or less makes the case for Zurdo to win the fight, even though he's the betting underdog. If you were going to pick him, that would have to be the why.
That would make the case. Where is the case for David? It's a little bit more simple. David's hand speed, his combinations in the pocket, he looks faster to the eye than Zurdo. If he can get there, he can probably beat him to the punch, like he did Anthony Yarde.
Though I do think Zurdo Ramirez is a much better fighter than Anthony Yarde, more decorated than Anthony Yarde, more durable, so it won't be as easy. Now, should David Benavidez win the fight, he will enter into the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list per the rules that govern it. In defeating a pound-for-pound fighter, you become one yourself, and my list is one of the few lists where Zurdo Ramirez holds a rank.
He's ranked at number 8. If David beats him, he'll likely enter into the bottom tier. But if Zurdo wins, if Zurdo beats the odds and beats David, it doesn't do that much for him. It only qualifies as a successful title defense.
It won't gain him any additional ground on the list, though it does make for good optics because David's a lot more popular than Zurdo, and this would qualify as the biggest win of Zurdo's career. People here in the United States like to call David Benavidez the Mexican monster, not actually being from Mexico, whereas Zurdo from Mazatlan. If he were to win this fight, I think he would replace David as the Mexican monster. Won't move him up my pound-for-pound list, but it will sway a lot of people's opinions on Zurdo if he were to win.
Does anybody really expect David Benavidez, should he win, to then drop all the way back down to light heavyweight? I'll say that I don't.
But in repeatedly saying that he will, that's how he hooks people in, because he says all the right things, when the reality of it is, Dimitri Bivol's about to fight Michael Eifert. After that, he's going to run it back with Artur, and while he's doing that, what is David going to be doing? More interviews? More podcasts? Name-dropping Canelo for the umpteenth time?
Says all the right things, and some people just eat it up without thinking about it.
How do you say that you're not going to fight Jai Opetaia because you want to fight Dimitri Bivol, because you want to fight Artur Beterbiev, when neither of them are going to be available in the near future? It's all just excuses. It's all just the guy saying the right things to people who so desperately want to believe him.
In men's heavyweight news,
it would seem that Jarrell Miller has officially made amends with Fast Eddie, as he's now about to face Linier to fight April 25th in Las Vegas in what is a matchroom show. The bout will take place at the Fontainebleau. And will be streamed globally by DAZN, which announced the bout on its social media platforms Tuesday. The seeds for a potential bout between the two were first planted November 1st, when Miller entered the ring to challenge Perro after the Cuban contender won a UD against Jordan Thompson at the Caribe Royale in Orlando, Florida. Miller fought once since then, winning a split decision against Kingsley eBay on the Ring 6 undercard January 31st at MSG in New York. The 37-year-old Brooklyn native went viral after his hairpiece literally began to come off his head from an uppercut eBay landed late in the second round. The win over eBay was Miller's first since 2023, when he stopped Lucas Brown in the 6th round. Miller is currently unranked by the WBA or any other sanctioning body.
I think the subject of Jerrell's hair situation is going to be more of a talking point than the guy who he's fighting.
Perro is ranked number 2 by the WBA, trailing only England's Moses Itauma. The 33-year-old southpaw is coming off a lackluster but one-sided win in a 10-round bout against Jordan Thompson. Perro had won 5 straight fights by stoppage or knockout before winning consecutive 10-round bouts by UD. Alexander Usyk holds the full WBA title, along with the Ring Magazine, IBF, and WBC. The Ukrainian southpaw is set to face former Glory kickboxing heavyweight champion Rico Verhoeven in a 12-round heavyweight bout May 23rd at the Pyramids of Giza in Egypt. Also on DAZN, the WBC is sanctioning the bout as a voluntary defense for the two-time undisputed heavyweight champion.
So if Jarrell Miller wins this fight, does he then become the mandatory challenger for Oleksandr Usyk? Not quite. Who he may become the mandatory for is Murat Gassiev,
the WBA's regular champion. Remember, they still have that regular title in circulation. The way it is, Jarrell Miller might either become his mandatory, or he might be in line for a Moses Atelma fight, since Moses Atelma has been doing the rounds in the heavyweight division and cleaning up the old line.
Him being the young lion, Jarrell Miller's not currently ranked by the WBA, but if he beats Linier, he may get that number 2 spot.
37 years old now, having made amends with Eddie Hearn. They have a working relationship again. I think time has forced Eddie Hearn to soften his stance on fighters who test positive for banned substances, because when Conor Benn popped for one, Eddie Hearn was a guy fighting tooth to nail in his defense. Perhaps he's a lot more understanding of Jarrell Miller now. Time heals all wounds.
Because Jarrell Miller is clean?
No, it's because the whole sport of boxing is dirty. The whole sport being dirty, does it really make sense to pigeonhole one guy for what everybody else might be doing? Jarrell Miller ain't no different from Conor Benn, who ain't no different from Oscar Valdez, who ain't no different from Canelo.
He was recently approached by Zuffa Boxing to come over to their side of things, and according to Jarrell Miller, while the Zuffa offer was all right, it was actually less than what he made in his last 2 bouts, both of which were on Turki El El Sheikh's Ring Magazine cards.
He said he didn't like that, and he didn't like that if you do sign to Zuffa, it's a long-term commitment that he didn't want to make, so he didn't, leaving the door open for this fight he's about to have under the Matchroom banner. That could lead to a Murat Gassiev fight. It could lead to a Moses Itelma fight. I like either of those fights, by the way, for Jerrell.
He's got a big personality and an even bigger midsection. It's almost like he endeared himself to the boxing community at large, suffering that very embarrassing moment in his last fight, but still grinding it out and getting the win.
It's just funny how things happen in the sport of boxing, because now he's back in bed with Matchroom, and I remember years ago, Eddie Hearn said he would never work with this guy again. Never say never.
So many people castigated him for his anti-doping fiasco, myself included, that over time, so many more fighters have been popped hot, it doesn't even make sense to hold it against him. It doesn't even make sense to pigeonhole him in what is this dirty sport